GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This here is episode 156.
156.
Wait a second. You're not John. This is not. Wait, what's happening here? Okay, I'll be honest. That was planned, and that was pretty sad and pathetic. I'm a terrible actor. But Ryan Wolfe, joined by the unpaid intern over here at Trust the Podcast, Chris Downey, which we may want to put him on the payroll at this point because, well, life happens. John could not make the podcast this week. All is well, just busy. So I called up Chris, and he said, name the time, name the place. We're here right now. We're talking Buffalo Bills at Houston Texans. Before we jump in and see how Chris is doing, you can always hear us at betterlivethandead.com, gearnetwork.com, wherever else you listen to podcasts. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well to make sure to stay up to date on the latest podcasts. So the good news on that one, hey, look at the episode pops up. You get the alert. You get to listen right then and there. Chris, my man, though, how you doing?
Doing well, Ryan. Back-to-back weeks on Trust the Podcasts. I think there's ulterior motives that we're going to look forward to as to why John isn't here this week.
Are you saying it's an inside job? Is that what you're looking at all of a sudden?
I think there's something going on. I think with the matchup we get this week, I think.
Look at you
John
can put your conspiracy
about it, but
you can put your conspiracy theories to rest, man. Because if there's one thing that John would not want to miss, it's talking about how the Jets fired their head coach, which we'll get to later in the podcast. But I want to thank you and John on the air for doing the podcast last week while I was in Orlando. It was very hot. And I was laying in a bed when I recorded that audio, which may be why you heard some rustling in the extra bedroom that we had at our villa or whatever they call it. But we're here to talk about the Buffalo Bills, man, and that game that was dreadful. It was absolutely dreadful. It was not nearly as close as the score. Buffalo falling 23-20 on a last-second 59-yard field goal to the Houston Texans. But, Chris, you know this. Everyone else knows it. Buffalo had no business being that close after how the game started. Buffalo did score 17 straight points after Houston took a 20-3 lead early in the third quarter. But shortly after that, man, bottomed out, and they just lost whatever momentum that they had. It was hard to watch at times. I mean, you expect in a long season to have games like this, to have stretches like this, but oh man, what an awful Sunday.
Yeah, I was driving back home from out of town trip, so I had an AirPod stuck in and just listening to the Bills Radio Network. So I didn't actually get to see it, but my gosh, it sounded a slow start, and I expected a little bit of a slow start. Why not? But I'm led to believe if Nico Collins didn't pull his hamstring and subsequently go to the IR after the game, Houston easily would have scored 40 points because they were able to take the top off that defense. It's something we can talk about in a minute, but injuries caught up to the Buffalo Bills in this game. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a tale of what we've seen in previous seasons where the defense makes their stops and the offense slowly somehow gets their way back in, and you need one more stop and it doesn't happen, or one more offensive drive and it just doesn't click, and the Bills lose a heartbreaker they should have never been in, and everyone's up in arms.
So I'm going to jump right into our three big things because, again, Buffalo should not have been in that situation to begin with, in my opinion. We'll talk about that here shortly as well. Our three big things brought to you by puckluck.com, your one-stop resource for all of your National Hockey League sports betting action. Puckluck provides win percentages and score projections for each and every National Hockey League game to tilt the ice in your favor. Not sure what to bet or just in a rut? Not to worry. Puckluck also provides expert picks to get the puck bouncing your way, but please note, puckluck.com, no way affiliated with the National Hockey League, its teams, or the NHLPA, Puckluck.com provides data related to gambling and cannot guarantee the success of any suggested or related wagers. As always, please gamble responsibly. Now, I did listen back, as I mentioned, to the podcast last week and caught a couple podcasts before that. I didn't realize for probably about the last calendar month, I had been sounding sick and didn't realize I was actually sick until the week before I went on vacation. I think I feel better. I think I sound better. I'm definitely feeling better so far in the podcast, but transitioning from feeling good to feeling terrible, Chris, the wrapping up the offense as we always do. Josh Allen, this is not a typo. 9 completions on 30 passing attempts, 131 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 4 rushes for 54 yards. There's good news here though, Chris. More history. Per at Buffalo Bills PR with his passing touchdown on Sunday, Josh Allen recorded his 231st career total touchdown and has now tied Patrick Mahomes for the most by a player in his first 7 seasons. That's about the only good thing to come out of this game. Jay Skursky points out on Twitter, the Bills had never lost a game with Allen at quarterback when being +2 or better in takeaways. That streak ended today. Also, Josh Allen was injured late, appeared to be knocked out late in the game. He did clear concussion protocol and returned after missing only 1 play. But Chris, as you mentioned to me this week, no injury designation. And Josh Allen brushed it off saying, I did what I needed to do to get back on the field, past the protocol, all that stuff. But what did you think about Josh Allen's play on Sunday? Was this Allen being bad, or do you think it was something else playing into it?
I think it was a combination of a lot of things. The Bills don't have a guy right now that they can just throw the ball to, a number 1 receiver, if you will. I think that's the thorn in the side everyone wants to solve. But I think he was, I don't know. He didn't throw an interception, so he leads the league in not throwing interceptions. He doesn't have one this year, knock on wood. So that's a good thing. But 9 of 30, that I haven't looked at numbers, but that probably is pretty low, if not the lowest throwing completion percentage for him in his career. For a game, it was dreadful. It's not like he was off. I just think there was it was just a multitude of things that led to that. And, just like we talk about sometimes interceptions shouldn't always be a quarterback stat. I'm sure there was at least a few plays that you can blame on whoever he was throwing to at the time, whether they were looking or not.
So just to run down the rest of the offense, then kind of tie it back to Josh Allen and the play calling, because I do think a lot of this had to do with the play calling. Now, you mentioned there aren't guys downfield to throw the ball to. The lack of separation without Khalil Shakir in the lineup, who was out with an ankle injury, was evident. Jumping around a little bit here, first off, just to mention, James Cook had 20 carries for 82 yards and a rushing touchdown, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 17 yards. He was limited in Wednesday and Thursday's practices with a toe injury. Speculations he may be dealing with turf toe. He was a DNP on the actual injury report. We'll find out the final injury designation on Saturday as to whether or not he'll play on Monday. He was in uniform and doing some light stretching and running off to the side, but was not involved actively in practice. We'll see what happens there. That would not be good for the Bills, obviously. And I mentioned here, nobody eats this week. The Bills offense, everybody eats this week. Nobody ate. 7 different receivers were targeted at least 2 times. Wide receivers alone had 18 total targets and caught a combined 4 passes for 76 yards and 1 touchdown. Keon Coleman had 1 reception on 5 targets. Dalton Kincaid, 2 on 6 targets. Mac Hollins, 2 receptions on 6 targets. Per ESPN, Chris, you're talking about the 9 for 30 here. Bills receivers caught only 4 of 18 targets on the day. The team's worst reception percentage since 2009 in week 13, and the worst by any team's wide receivers with a minimum of 15 targets since 2016. The Los Angeles Rams did that in week 16. And then I come down here and go, hey, the play calling may have been a little piss poor. At yards per pass points out on Twitter. Josh completed 7 passes beyond the line of scrimmage yesterday, and only 1 was in the air for more than 10 yards downfield. So again, it seems like Buffalo tried to next man up it with Khalil Shakir going out, and I think they quickly realized there's a big gap between Khalil Shakir and the next man up.
Yeah, I think it's a hodgepodge of who's who on the wideouts for Buffalo right now. You got Keon Coleman, you have Curtis Samuel, who they paid a nice little price for in free agency this summer. But we really haven't seen much of them. I give Coleman a pass as a rookie. I usually give rookies a pass for doing dumb things, doing things that aren't typical of a professional sports player, if you will, regardless of the sport. And I don't want to just isolate football. But, you have Curtis Samuel, who's been in the league, and he's invisible. You have MVS and Mac Hollins, who taking up space, for lack of a better phrase, and Kincaid, who's not been used as much. I mean, we saw it a week or two ago. He got a few first half receptions, but you got guys that you should be using in Coleman, Kincaid, and Samuel that are not being used right now, and it's quite baffling to say the least.
And Curtis Samuel is still on the injury report with a toe injury, limited with a toe injury. We still don't know how much that is affecting his explosiveness or his ability to play, because the Bills are not throwing to him downfield much, if at all. But he's a consummate professional. He's not going out in the media saying, I'm hurt, I can't play, I'm having trouble. It's just, let's be better next time. So you've got that. But then also, you've got boneheaded moves that we saw in the final drive. The Buffalo Bills started with 32 seconds remaining in the game. The Bills threw 3 straight passes. Chris, they had the ball, 32 seconds left in the game. They threw 3 straight passes and punted with 16 seconds remaining. Mind you, I do understand that Houston did possess 3 timeouts, but at the end of the day, make them use those timeouts. Try to get some yardage to get to the first down to either move the ball downfield and try to kick a field goal, or just get it to overtime, because at that point, if you're getting overtime, you're goddamn lucky. The Bills had an opportunity to steal a game and simply couldn't. Now, here's another good stat for you, Chris, as if you would have expected any less of me. This is a joint stat per at ESPN Stats Info and at Elias Sports. Buffalo, the only team in the last 45 years to be tied or leading in the final minute of a game inside their own 5-yard line and throw 3 straight passes. It's fun to make history. It ain't fun to make that kind of history. And shockingly, Sean McDermott at the end of the game said, quote, "That's on me. The end of the game situation on offense. We were in a tough situation. They're holding 3 timeouts. They got a good field goal kicker. We needed to run the clock and move the chains. That's on me. We didn't do that there. That's my fault." Now, there's speculation that there were checkdowns that Josh Allen could have taken and did not take and was trying to matriculate the ball down the field. But Chris, we've had this conversation before. I know you've heard it, and I know you and I have had it. Coaches have good games and coaches have bad games, but Sean McDermott shows time and time again that he, having coached his 119th career game on Sunday, he may just not have it when the going gets tough, and he actually has to make a split-second decision that could potentially affect the outcome of a game.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where, you got a new offensive coordinator, and honestly, a lot of Sunday reminded me of the days when it was just confused with Ken Dorsey, and I hate bringing that name up right now, but everyone, I think it was just a bad day all around for everybody in Buffalo, and in a situation like that, I don't know. I think it's not like it's, 3rd down with 2 timeouts on the opposition and then this yard line and super strict specific scenario that you have to do, calculus to figure out what the best play is. I mean, it's first down, less than a minute left. If you get 1 first down running 3 times, you're running that clock. And if they burn all their timeouts, it's 1 kneel down and you go to overtime. I mean, that happens. You see that a lot in football, and you get the 3rd down and you need to pass, you pass. I mean, I don't know, but on the other side of it, I think if Buffalo had converted or gotten into field goal territory or even scored on those 3 pass plays, we wouldn't be talking about the boneheaded plays of 3 straight passes when you're, inside your own 10-yard line, whatever, inside your own 10 with under a minute left in the game. Because again, if you run it and you get stuffed 3 times, well, the same situation will be said. Why'd you run it 3 times and punt it? So
that's fair. And not to mention too, the Bills did have a great opportunity when CJ Stroud fumbled the ball and the Bills ended up kicking the game tying field goal at the time. But the Bills just could not get anything going downfield. And Matt Bove on Twitter at Matt_BOVE, he highlights the Bills' inability to create separation without Khalil Shakir. He said, quote, "The press box in Houston is very high, but it gives you a great perspective of the entire field. There is quite literally nobody open on these plays." So again, Josh Allen did a good job to on 30 pass attempts. Not throw an interception. That's awesome. But clearly, something's got to give. I mean, Mac Hollins, don't get it twisted. Great blocking wide receiver. Not a guy I want out there getting multiple targets a game. Keon Coleman is still developing, still very young. There were plays on Sunday where you went, what the hell is he doing? There are other plays where you go, wow, that guy's incredible. I don't know what the deal is with Dalton Kincaid, if it's just scheming. The other teams are scheming him out of the game plan, but it seems like the Bills can't get him the ball. And then Dawson Knox, I have no idea where Dawson Knox is. But again, it just seems like there are guys who can catch the ball, are not as talented as Khalil Shakir is, but at the same time, you got to figure it out. You put yourself in the situation, and it kind of brought me back to that conversation we had prior to the year, where it's, the Bills aren't actively trying to win the Super Bowl, but they also aren't actively trying to lose. In a situation like this, I think shows it to me that, and again, Matt Bove points this out on Twitter. It was a great tweet. He said, the glass, there's one of two things. You can look at it this way. Either the glass is half full, the Bills are still in first place in the AFC East and can separate themselves with winning against the Jets. They also should be getting healthier, or the glass half empty. The wide receiver room is the worst it's been since 2019, and the coaching staff threw away a golden opportunity to steal a win on Sunday. Safety also remains a big concern, and the defensive line without Ed Oliver, who's been hurt, has been too inconsistent. So even though the Bills are 3-2 and they look to be the head of the class in the AFC East, there's still a lot to figure out with this team.
Yeah, I think we talked about the wide receivers, and I'm sure we will at least talk about the smoking fire of Devontae Adams, if you will, later in the show. But that has to get figured out. I think you got to figure out something, whether it's scheming, whether it's technical ability of just these athletes. I don't know. I'm not a football guru in that side of things, but something needs to change. I do know that. Glass half full side. Bills still have a game up on the Jets. They can make it 2 this week. And, you can make it 2 on the Dolphins as well if they lose this weekend as well. There is opportunity there. Now you talk about, not trying to go for a Super Bowl this year, not trying to go all in because of $31 million dead cap. If you're looking at the schedule, if you told me it would have been 3-2 at this point, I would have been happy. I also thought we would have lost at Miami at the beginning of the year. And beaten Houston, but you're still 3-2, and it doesn't hurt or doesn't help things, I guess, when you score 34, 31, and 47 points to start the year and very convincing wins to get these high expectations, top of people's power rankings, MVP chance for Josh. This team is having a down year and they're 3-0 and looking on cruise control, and then you run into Baltimore, which, is going to be a tough game. And then you have an absolute stinker in Houston. I think you right the ship at New York. You got a couple winnable games coming up with New York and Tennessee. Get the 5-2 all as well. Make a move before the deadline, fix the wide receiver room, and see what happens.
I hate to say it's only October, but it's only October. I mean, every team in the AFC, good, bad, or indifferent, looks beatable. Even the Chiefs, who are undefeated, look beatable. Teams just can't put it together. I mean, they haven't looked great. Patrick Mahomes is throwing a ton of interceptions, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing I want to point out here, that I was going to try to get a good little pop out of John. So, Chris, if you don't laugh, it's okay. But, John, please let me know if you thought this was funny. One of my friends, friend of the pod, said, quote, "I think Bean should just say they're trying to win as best as they can this year, but their hands are kind of tied with the salary cap. So he's really focused on building a real winner next year, a sort of Project 2025, if you will."
I saw that on the run sheet here a few minutes ago, and I didn't want to interrupt your talking with my laughter.
It's a good joke. It's a very good joke.
It's hilarious.
Running down the defense really quick, wrapping up the defense and special teams just real fast. Linebacker Dorian Williams, a real bright spot this year. 12 total tackles, 11 solo, 1 fumble recovery. Now, we know that tackles are kind of an overrated stat, but here's the deal, Chris. When you're tied for first in the NFL with 54 total tackles, that tells me something. you got a nose for the ball. Like you are where the ball is, and that's great to see for a Bills defense that really needed a linebacker to step up in the absence of Terrell Bernard, who returned on Sunday, had 5 tackles, 2 solo, 1 pass defended, and 1 pick in his first action since suffering a pectoral strain in week 1. Again, we mentioned before, the Bills are getting healthier. Hopefully that trend continues because they need all the healthy players that they can get. Kicker Tyler Bass, 2 for 2 on extra points, 2 for 2 on field goals, 38 yards and 33 yards. And really the MVP of special teams on Sunday, Sam Martin, 8 punts for 401 total yards, a 50.1 average, 63 yards with his longest punt, and he had 5 punts land inside Houston's 20-yard line. Now, Chris, all I'm going to say about that, great on Sam Martin. I hope we don't talk about him for a very long time.
The punter is one of those. It's kind of a catch-22. If they have a great day, multiple punts, averaging well, punting a lot, it's like, great, you did your job well. But that means something else had to go wrong for you to be on the field. I love the days, what was it, 2 seasons ago? We had 4 or 5 games where we didn't punt, whether it was a turnover, touchdown, or field goal. I don't remember the exact season, but I feel like there were a few games where Sam Martin did not do a whole lot. Let's get back to those kind of games where we don't have to worry about Sam Martin punting a whole lot.
I agree with you. There's nothing more there that needs to be said. We're going to throw it to a quick commercial break. When we come back here on Trust the Podcast, around the NFL and our look ahead, stick around for more Trust the Podcast right after this here on the Gear Radio Network. And we're back here on Trust the Podcast, our third of the 3 big things this week around the NFL, brought to you by Go Frost Yourself. Chris, you're our guest, my guest this week. I'll take over this for you, just so that way I could try to do a Macho Man Randy Savage impression. Not very good, so I'll spare you. But Go Frost Yourself, located in Rochester, New York. Go Frost Yourself does what other local bakeries do not. They bake from scratch, creating recipes themselves and using the best fresh ingredients they can find to create delicious flavors for customers daily. Molly and Jen, as John says, hi, Molly. Hello, Jen. Have worked tirelessly to create what Go Frost Yourself has become today, and their passion can be tasted in the items that they bake. When you find yourself looking for a special occasion, or maybe you just want to try their incredible cinnamon rolls, if you're local, you can go visit Go Frost Yourself's storefront at 2544 Ridgeway Ave or at gofrostyourself.com. Now, Chris, week 4 around the NFL, Kirk Cousins turned the clock back on Thursday Night Football. Atlanta defeated Tampa Bay 36-30. Kirk Cousins 42 for 58, 509 passing yards, 4 touches, and 1 pick. Wow, man, he balled out on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I was in a fantasy league. I don't remember which one. I'm in quite a few. I was going against Kirk Cousins and I believe Drake London. And if you're wondering if I won that matchup, I did not. I believe it was a league that I got pretty handled early on. But a great football game. Kirk Cousins, I believe he passed Matt Ryan for the all-time single game record for the Falcons on Matt Ryan night, or at least Matt Ryan was in attendance.
I believe he was put in there in the Ring of Honor.
So Ring of Honor this, says Kirk.
I got a ring for you, brother.
Oh yeah, brother.
I don't know where I was going with that one, but excuse me, I accidentally closed out of my outline there. Okay. Cincinnati falls to Baltimore 41-38 in overtime. Cincinnati falls to 1-4 on the season. They led Baltimore by 10 points 3 different times in the second half, which transitions well to our early season shockers here. The Los Angeles Rams also 1-4, 0-3 on the road. They've lost to Detroit, Arizona, and Chicago all the way from home. And really, Chris, they are a last-minute field goal versus the 49ers away from an 0-5 start. Things are not looking too good over there in Los Angeles for the Rams.
No, they're not. But they also won a Super Bowl a few years ago. So,
I believe they did say "fuck them" picks, and it may the chicken may be coming to roost or whatever the saying is.
Yeah, just go with that. Ryan, I do have a question for you. I just thought of going back to the Cincinnati-Baltimore game. Put Buffalo in that situation. If Buffalo led Baltimore by 10 points multiple times in the second half, but lost in overtime, would you take that, or would you just take the absolute shellacking we took last week on Sunday Night Football and just call it a day.
I like the shellacking better, because at the end of the day, I feel like the Bills will learn more from it. Where if you just say, we were one stop away, like, no, they weren't one stop away. They were really just poor the whole game. And now we're at the point where they're a little better right now, so.
That's fair.
Speaking of gigantic piles of human shit, Cleveland quarterback Deshaun Watson's in the news. Why, you ask? Well, he's awful. He is awful. Like, hear me out. Per USA Today, the Browns have not scored more than 18 points in any game this season. They average a league worst 3.9 yards per play and 239.4 yards per game. Watson ranked 32nd for those keeping score at home. That's dead ass last in the NFL with a 23.9 QBR and a 31.7 passing success rate. The most glaring stat, Watson's negative 0.3 EPA expected points added, per dropback is the lowest number for any Browns quarterback in weeks 1 through 5 since at least 2000. They've had some pretty god-awful quarterbacks since 2000. Even lower than Watson's minus 0.2 EPA last season. Essentially, right now, don't expect points to be scored with Deshaun Watson. Cleveland head coach Kevin Stefanski, a saint among men at this point, says Watson will not be benched in week 6. But Chris, little birdie's got me thinking that maybe Kevin Stefanski's not making that decision because two-time coach of the year can see it. Deshaun Watson is fucking awful. But for those, again, keeping score at home that want to just absolutely laugh it up, per over the cap, cutting Deshaun Watson after 2024 would eat up $99.8 million of Cleveland's 2025 cap. That's 36% of their cap next season. A post-June 1st cut lessens that hit to $46 million. Quote, the soonest the Browns could cut Deshaun Watson without losing tens of millions of dollars is 2026, the final year of his deal. Because Watson's deal is fully guaranteed, remember, there is technically no scenario where the team can release the quarterback and save cap space. Oh, the Cleveland Browns keep on being the Cleveland Browns, and Deshaun Watson, you're a piece of shit. Anyways, moving on to the more exciting news here on the podcast this week, Chris. Who will acquire wide receiver Davante Adams? It's kind of like where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, except Davante Adams. Diana Rossini reported the Raiders wanted Adams traded this week. It is Friday afternoon, Friday evening at this point. I don't think that's going to happen. Las Vegas is reportedly in search of a second-round pick as compensation. The Jets and the Saints are reportedly co-leaders in the clubhouse, but speculation throughout the week that Buffalo's interest might creep back up after their wide receiver-less performance last Sunday. Now, Chris, the interesting thing about the Jets, we'll talk about in a minute, they just fired their head coach. That seems like a tire fire situation right now. New Orleans, Derek Carr just went down with an oblique injury for multiple weeks. Davante Adams wants to play with Derek Carr. I understand that as well. They're good friends. They were good friends when they played in college and in Las Vegas on the Raiders. So to me, it seems more like, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this in a second, but it seems to me more like Vegas is going, we got a deal on the table that we'll take it, but does somebody else want to offer us more?
It's funny. This is, I feel like we have this every few years of what star player is going to move after having a public outcry of sorts. Obviously with Aaron Rodgers, that's that was a thing, I believe, when Rodgers was even coming back, getting Davante Adams wherever he went. So, I know that's been a talk for the last few years. Saints, obviously playing with Derek Carr would be enjoyable for him. Like you said, he just got hurt. But also, looking at, if you want to throw Buffalo into that mix of that discussion, which of the three quarterbacks do you think you would want to play with? 40-plus-year-old Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, who is hurt, or in his prime, Josh Allen? Well, I know the answer to that.
You make a lot of sense, but it's good friend, and I'm not sure.
Yes.
Also, you have to remember, too, and Chris, you know this, but I'll just pretend like you don't so I can play to the podcast audience here. The Buffalo Bills can't afford Davante Adams at the current clip that he is against the salary cap right now. But a team like Buffalo has enough firing power that if the Raiders, who reportedly are currently not willing to eat any of that money, if they were willing to eat some more money, a team like Buffalo could pay more for Davante Adams. Now, I'm not even considering the fact that Davante Adams wants a new deal reportedly after the season, but it seems to me right now this is the perfect situation for both Davante Adams and the Buffalo Bills to consummate the marriage, to become best friends. Josh Allen needs a wide receiver who can separate and run down the field and just be a game breaker. There's Davante Adams. Davante Adams wants to play for a team that is interested in winning. That's the Buffalo Bills. It really seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that popped up the last day or two. Obviously, it's the fun discussion of where he's going to go. But one thing that I saw come up from yesterday, I have two things here. Marcel Reese, who used to play for the Raiders, and he was also a front office guy for a couple of years, according to his Wikipedia, said that he considers the Bills as a sneaky team that could get in there. But also said it might be a couple weeks before Davante gets dealt, which I think plays in the Bills' favor. If the Raiders don't get a deal they like, might got to take what you have before he just walks free. But another thing, TJ Who's Your Mama, if you guys remember that, TJ Houshmandzadeh from the Bengals back in the day. From the Bills side, Davante Adams will be most likely better than any second-round draft pick the Bills take in the next couple years. So if you're looking for a win now, that second round pick will definitely be, probably a good player, but maybe take a couple years. And
that's the thought process that this organization has not used in quite a while. Because again, don't get me wrong, Chris, we can run down the list of draft picks. We can talk about how good the Buffalo Bills have been with drafting, especially late in the draft. They have found some absolute gems, right? But at the same time, how serious are you about winning? We know the Bills are serious because, again, four-time AFC East defending champions. I get that. But at some point in time, you need to make a move that will put you over the top. I feel like a Davante Adams move with how well the offensive line was playing. I mean, granted, there has been increased pressure on Josh Allen as the season has gone on. They'll have to figure that out. But having Dalton Kincaid, having James Cook, having Khalil Shakir, add Davante Adams into that. Exactly. And also, no big deal, you have Josh Allen as well. Like, come on, man. It's a no-brainer move. You got to do it. Worst case scenario, it backfires. You go, at least we tried, right? But exactly. I can't imagine a guy like Davante Adams that has had so much success in the National Football League, especially with very good quarterbacks who can matriculate the ball down the field. This seems like it's a no-brainer, but I don't know why they wouldn't do it or why they wouldn't pay the price.
Exactly. And I think also if you look back, I mean, even when Stephon Diggs was in the last, several months of his career in Buffalo last season, he still drew attention because it's Stephon Diggs. Davante Adams might not be 100% at any point, knock on wood, still going to draw attention, which opens up the field for a lot of other people. And one thing Josh loves to do is take the top off defenses and just drop dimes 75 yards down the field right into people's laps and not get caught in the playoffs. But, maybe Davante can be that guy that can make that catch that sets up Buffalo for a game-sealing field goal, game-sealing touchdown, puts him over the hump. So, Ryan, before we move on, I just saw something on the Twitter machine. The NFL and NFLPA said that the concussion protocols were followed correctly for Josh Allen last week, and doesn't seem to be any issue regarding that. So for those wondering if, Josh got some special privilege, both sides have said, nope, they were good to go.
I was going to mention that too, because as I'm scrolling through Twitter, you're trying to find more Davante Adams news that did pop up. So again, yes, it was followed. Both sides said, yep, we followed. Yep. Awesome. Great. Which is great, which is fantastic news because obviously it's independent and people think, the Bills doctor just cleared him to get him back out there. No, he it didn't look good on the field. Let's put it that way. It did not look good on the field.
He was taking a nap.
It looked like he was sleeping, especially in slow motion. You could see as his hand is sliding and then it starts to roll and then he just keeps rolling on his hand. You're like, I feel like if someone was rolling on their hand like that, they might go, it doesn't feel too good. I'm not going to do that. But hey, when you're sleeping, again, it's not perfect.
we know the concussion protocol procedure is not perfect, but it works right now. Looking ahead, Chris, wrapping up the podcast here. Week 4, Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets, Monday Night Football, kickoff at 8:15 p.m. on ESPN. The New York Jets, 2-3, tied for second in the AFC East. Last week, a 23-17 loss to the Minnesota Vikings in London. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers suffered a low ankle sprain in Sunday's loss, but is said to be, quote, fine for Monday night's matchup. Now, granted, before we get to Robert Saleh, dude, the Jets have been doing Aaron Rodgers dirty. First off, in the loss to Minnesota, Chris, 54 passing attempts. You never want to see any quarterback, let alone a 40-year-old quarterback. I don't care if it's future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. I don't care if it's your dad tossing balls in the side yard to your brother and sister. You never want to see that happen. You're never going to have a good time when someone over the hill is attempting 54 passes in a game. But furthermore, Rodgers has been hit a total of 25 times over the last 2 games, both losses. So it seems like, and I know this is very logical, and John is probably listening to this right now going, no shit, you idiot. If you have Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball a lot and getting hit a lot, you're not going to win a lot of football games. The run game for the Jets has been diminishing returns recently. And really, that all comes to the head of the New York Jets now firing head coach Robert Saleh. What are your thoughts, Chris, on the Jets moving on from their head coach so early on in the season?
I find it interesting that Aaron Rodgers said he didn't have a role in it. I think there had to be something. I just have that weird feeling based on what we've seen the past few weeks. 5 games in, we've talked about it. If you're going to fire a head coach a month into the season, technically 5 weeks, why don't you do it at the beginning of the year? Get someone else in there for the first 5 games because, unless something drastically changes with the head coach or there's some issue that needs to be resolved with the firing, just, go on for another 5 weeks and see what happens. There had to be some sort of disconnect. And the reports coming out that, Saleh was coming in ready to roll and gets brought in, says you're gone with no inclination and, security escort, didn't really get to talk to the team. I mean, something that doesn't sound like there was a lot of chance for him there anyways.
There have been a lot of reports in Robert Saleh, give him his flowers, 20 and 36 as the Jets head coach. Great defensive mind. He'll probably end up guessing Miami or San Francisco. Said he's not joining a team this year because if the reports are correct, he's getting paid roughly what was it? I don't want to get the number right or wrong.
Like 20,000.
That's what I thought. $20,000 per week for the remainder of the year, if not for the remainder of his contract, the next couple of years to do nothing. So he'll
per day,
pop up.
per day, 20,000 per day.
He'll pop up somewhere very soon. But defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich is going to be the interim head coach. Nathaniel Hackett stripped of play calling duties. Todd Downing, the former offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans, now current quarterbacks coach, passing game coordinator of the Jets, will call the plays. The rumor was that Saleh was going to come in and strip Nathaniel Hackett of play calling duties, which Hackett has worked well with Aaron Rodgers. Hackett has been relatively dog water everywhere else he's been, including Buffalo, Jacksonville, Denver. If it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, it's probably a duck. ESPN's matchup predictor has 54% of America believing Buffalo will right the ship and end their 2-game skid on Monday Night Football. Chris, I'm a little worried because you got that juice coming in of an interim head coach. The offense is going to want to play really good for a new guy calling plays. I think this game may end up being closer than we probably want it to be, but I still got the Bills coming out on top because at the end of the day, Josh Allen.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's some internal reason that, Saleh got fired that the players might not like, and that might cause some tension, but who knows? I think, I think I'd like to see Buffalo win. I like when Buffalo goes to the good old Meadowlands to get a W. With the way Buffalo played the last 2 weeks, with the way the Jets played, it's unfortunate this is a Monday night game right now, but hopefully Buffalo can come out and play like the first 3 weeks and put the game on ice early on, and second half is more of a formality, if you will, at this point. But who knows? It is a division rival. It is a game that means a lot. And I mean, Buffalo can separate themselves pretty well in the division with the win. It would be 2 games up on the Jets. And then, Miami, it can be another game up on them, 2 games up on them if they lose at Indy this week as well. So, good opportunity to create some separation.
Well, hey, we don't have the audio board this week because Chris, good Lord, because Chris is here and John is not. But hey, Chris Berman, that's why I was saying, Chris, don't get it twisted. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. For Chris Downey, I am Ryan Wolfe. We are Trust the Podcast.
You are not.
We will catch you same time, same place next week. Here, myself, hopefully John Cimino, if not Chris Downey, will be here. Chris, thank you for joining the podcast today.
Always a pleasure, Ryan.
And as always, thank you for tuning in, and go Bills.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.